back. Let's hear from Norman Barenboim from Department of Business Regulation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Norman Barenboim. I'm a principal policy and economic analyst with the Department of Business Regulation, charged with administering the department's oversight of Rhode Island's medical marijuana program. I'm here on behalf of Director Lindsay to express the Department of Business Regulation's concern over language within House Bill 5865, which proposes to increase the number of registered compassion centers from 3 compassion centers to 6 compassion centers. Last year's budget transferred authority over the registration and regulation of Rhode Island's 3 existing compassion centers from the Department of Health to the Department of Business Regulation. Since then, the Department of Business Regulation has promulgated regulations creating new standards over all aspects of compassion center operation, including product safety, pesticide use, packaging, labeling, manufacturing, inventory tracking, sanitation, workplace safety, security, registration renewals, record keeping, and purchasing and transferring medicine from newly licensed cultivators. The Department of Business Regulation does not oppose increasing the number of compassion centers if the General Assembly believes it would benefit Rhode Island's medical marijuana program. However, House Bill 5865 would remove DBR's oversight and regulation of any additional compassion centers. The Department of Business Regulation's oversight is essential to ensuring patients have access to safe and consistent medicine, and medical marijuana is not diverted to the black market. The department respectfully asks that if the General Assembly does expand the number of compassion centers, it does so within the existing regulatory structure so that any new compassion centers are regulated by the Department of Business Regulation. And this letter has been provided to you from the Director of DBR. I do also want to offer some comment to address some of the issues that have been brought up here today in terms of what the state is and is not doing in terms of regulation of home grows, access from law enforcement. I want to thank the chief who was here earlier. Our office met with him, his town solicitor, their town manager, fire officials and other public safety and zoning officials to go over what is 108 pages of regulations that we've promulgated over this industry. We have also met with the majority of municipalities across the state to let them know what resources we are providing to them and to let them know what we are doing to regulate what has been an untenable situation. I don't believe that Ms. Ruggieri, Representative Corvasi's constituent, is still here. I don't see her. If she were here, I would tell her that I'm sorry, I do believe you, and I do want to talk to her. As of 11 days ago, April 1st, there is a method for regulating home grows. From the changes to the medical marijuana program last year, every single plant that is grown in the state in a home grow must have a tag that is issued by the state. Every single person who's growing in their homes must have ordered that tag by April 1st, and the governing regulations are in place as of then, 11 days ago. These tags contain the person's medical marijuana registration card ID number. They contain a barcode that can be scanned. They contain an RFID chip which can be scanned for verification, and they also contain the address of the registered grow where that tag is permitted to be used. This is for compliance. This is so that police or law enforcement know when they come into contact with someone who's in the program, they can verify right there on the spot whether or not it's a legal grow, whether or not the information on the tags matches the address so that you don't have people growing in multiple locations, and that the person who's presenting them with the card is the person who's allowed to be having those plants. In terms of being able to confirm with law enforcement whether someone is in the program, the Department of Health is limited by statute to confirming just based off of the confirmation ID number that's on the card. I'll let them talk about their processes there. But what DBR has now is a registry of these growers and of these tags so that we can properly regulate this. We have put in place a procedure by which if we receive information to suggest someone is not compliant with our rules and regulations for tag use and for growing, which govern making sure that appropriate actions are taken to mitigate smell, making sure it's not visible from the street, making sure that all grows are in an indoor secure location where it's not accessible by children, and a list of other things. If we receive data that suggests that someone's not compliant with those regulations, we have a procedure by which we notify the person, letting them know that we have that information and giving them an opportunity to correct it and to respond. Depending on what happens next, it can be escalated to an on-site inspection. And if at any time during that procedure we believe that there is criminal activity happening, we do not hesitate to notify the state police, the HIDTA, High Intensity Drug Task Force, and local police to let them know what is happening. There's a difference between someone complaining because they can smell a grow and someone saying, I've got 15 or 20 people driving up to my neighbor's house every day and I can see 100 plants. Statute allows us to notify law enforcement when we receive any type of false documentation from someone who is growing. And when they receive their tags, and we've been doing distribution for the last 3 weeks, it was happening again tonight. People are, tags are out there being used. The state police have already contacted us to let us know that they've encountered grows with tags, and it's made their lives a lot easier because it's a knock and talk and not a potentially dangerous situation for them. But this is something that's happening right now. I apologize that it's been a long time in the making. It's been a very long 10 years for law enforcement and municipal officials, but we do have these regulations in place. It is working. We are developing with our vendor a mobile portal so that police, either when they obtain a warrant or when they've reached that threshold of probable cause, they will be able to go in and they will be able to verify whether that person is growing, so they know, they have all the information that they need so that they are safe and so that a patient or a caregiver is not being harassed. I'm happy to answer any other questions, but this is a new change. It's something that we've been out speaking with cities and towns about, doing briefings for municipal officials, did one through the League of Cities and Towns as well. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Representative Vella Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions. So it sounds like with this new tagging that you have your arms wrapped around accountability with regards to the homegrowners, or at least it looks like you're well on your way to having the accountability with regards to the number of the plants, the height, and so forth. So my question is, and I just don't know it, when it comes to compliance, who is it that's responsible for checking the water runoff from the plants, whether or not the plants are being treated with for aphids, what's happening with regards to mold, if the home grower has overwatered, and that the THC level is consistent?
So the department is limited in what we can regulate through our licensed growing and then registered growing. You, I believe, are referring to registered growing, patients and caregivers growing in their home under their Department of Health registration. The different regulations that I talked about in this letter are for our licensed entities, a compassion center, a cultivator. With 17,000 patients in the program who potentially could all be growing, and with an additional 2,700 caregivers, we do not have the resources to make sure that we are checking for water runoff or mold in home grows. It's not something that we currently do. It's not something that we have the ability to do, and it's also something that, for the most part, tends to fall on the municipality to regulate when you're talking about wastewater runoff, and typically there's a local official that deals with that aspect. We are regulating what we've been charged to regulate in state statute, and we are giving as many resources as possible to law enforcement and municipal officials so that they understand when someone is in the program and when they're compliant with state law. But none of the things that you just mentioned are actually accounted for in statute. We're not currently enabled to regulate those.
Thank you, sir.
Almeida.
Thank you. I'm sure glad you're here. I apologize, like the chief, for you taking the heat, but nothing personal, it's just political. I missed a portion of your testimony. So, with marijuana, in the conversation of the legalities of it, are there federal guidelines that you have to follow by?
There are. There's standing federal guidance in the form of the Cole Memo, which is a result from the previous federal administration's Department of Justice, which is basically guidelines for states that have medical programs, and now there are 28 states with medical programs of some sort, which state that the Department of Justice and the federal authorities will allow you to operate as long as you're addressing certain things. They talk about organized crime and background checks being part of the program. They talk about firearms not being part of the program, access to children, and I can get you a copy of the Cole Memo if you'd like, but there are certain guidelines that they give us so that we can stay within our own jurisdiction and not have to worry about them coming in. There's also a federal rider to the federal budget, which prohibits the Department of Justice from funding any type of enforcement action against someone as long as they are abiding by that state's program and that state's local laws.
I surely would like to see that. Cole, you call it?
The Cole Memo, yes.
Cole Memo. The other thing, and I'm finding it very difficult for me to understand, what Rep. Corvasi's constituent went through, and the police officers over here, we're supposed to, as the old saying goes, protect and serve, but you can't do it if you have no knowledge. And I'm going to keep saying 100 times till somebody understands it, that police officers are about to go down this legal black hole. Now, I understand PC, probable cause. We all know that's part of our lifeblood. But something wrong, something bad's going to happen legally if an officer, his PC, his probable cause, is going to get wilted because the Department of Health said, I'm putting words in your mouth, we're not telling you who's got this reefer growing. So why can't there be some way in which you could, I mean, you're sending it to police officers who we're supposed to trust to enforce the law. So why not send them something to let them know who is what in what town and doing whatever?
Sure, and I don't know if this was part of the testimony that you had missed, but we are developing that way. The first question...
You are developing that?
We are. The first question was, what's out there? How do we make sure people are abiding by their current limits, and how can we have a mechanism to track it and to give law enforcement the information to verify when they come into contact with someone who's in the program and who is growing? And the solution to that has been these tags, which we have received thousands of orders for and are currently getting all the tags out to everyone in the program. The next stage of that is to make sure that there is a search portal that is accessible to law enforcement in the field that is within the scope of what we're allowed to do under statute, to provide them with the information that they need so that they are safe and so that patients and caregivers are not being either needlessly harassed or so that they're not having their privacy violated. So we are in the process of developing that. Until it actually gets developed and it's placed in the field with law enforcement, we're in very close contact with the State Police Drug Task Force, the Attorney General's Office, and other municipal law enforcement, particularly in Warwick, where there are a large number of grows and where we have a number of our larger licensed entities, constant communication with the fire marshal and the fire department there and city officials. So we're trying to be as proactive as possible right now with temporary solutions until we get the permanent solution in place, which we're working very hard to do.
So, what are we talking? How long is this going to... Listen, whether I'm sure you've done your homework on all of us. Civil rights is a big issue with me. It is the horse that I ride on. And if a cop pulls somebody over under what's going on now, a lot of civil rights are going to get violated. You all are waiting 10 years to make a program. So how many of poor people may get violated in between that time who have the right to carry that marijuana or grow the marijuana, whatever it may be, however they do it? but the cop don't, and there's no rules or regulations over him or her, and there's no rules or regulations to protect the person with the card. So why is it taking the Department of Health so long? 10 years. This is definitely a civil rights issue that somebody's about to get hurt.
I can't speak to the Department of Health. I can say that they have never been given dedicated resources for this program. One of the things that happened last year with these changes is that the Department of Health and the Department of Business Regulation were given resources through restricted receipt accounts to be able to do this. So for now, all the fees that get collected from the program go right back to the Department of Health and then to the Department of Business Regulation so that we can make sure that we're tackling that issue and that we have dedicated funding. And if the program grows, the funding will grow with it. So, that has been a large obstacle towards the customer service and communication aspect of this because there's never been dedicated funding for the program.
Wait a minute. If the funding grows and the program grows, so 10 years, you mean to tell me that in those 10 years, y'all didn't try to sit down with somebody to be proactive before something really happens out on the street where cops could go in a building thinking it's illegal, and he doesn't know who these undercover guys are, and then we get a little bit of spray bullets going all over the place because the department of whomever can't talk to one another, can't work together to what you're supposed to do, because that's a health issue. Somebody's about to get shot. That's taking too long for me. 10 years? And trust me, I've done some civil rights stuff up there, and I'm used to being in a long haul. But this one is the worst. And your two departments need to talk. The Attorney General's office, I don't mean to speak for them, but I know they're willing to work with you for enforcement and for the protection of our citizens. So this may not deal directly with marijuana, but it does for the civil rights horse that I ride on. I ask that you work on that a whole lot faster.
Absolutely. The only thing I can say in response is that, the governor's administration recognized that this was a problem, took action in the budget last year to put in place resources and a new regulatory framework to be able to address it. In the, I think it's about 9 months or so since that passed, we have promulgated regulations. We've hired FTEs for the purpose of regulation. We've put in place a new framework. We've got new licenses out there. We've taken thousands of orders for tags, and now we've gotten them out. So we recognize the urgency there. I don't have a response for failure to act prior to what the governor recognized and did last budget cycle, but we are moving as quickly as possible to address this now.
Not you. Your possible ain't possible for me. It's more like mission impossible right now. The people, whether you like this bill or hate it, it don't matter. It's still about having the right to do something and the right to be protected. That's not being done. I just don't want to see police officers get blamed for it not being done when we're talking about it right now. But I understand. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further for Norm?